The phone started vibrating at 2:47 in the morning. I didn't reach for it right away. I just opened my eyes in the darkness and watched the screen light up the ceiling over and over again. Blue light, then darkness. Blue light, then darkness. Her name glowed there. Sarah Mobile. My daughter. I let it ring through to voicemail. 2 minutes later, it started again. Then again, and again. Outside my window, the Atlantic Ocean whispered against the rocky Maine coastline. Inside, my phone danced across the nightstand with increasing desperation. 5 calls. 6, 7, 8. There was a time when I would have answered on the first ring, when my daughter's voice, no matter what hour, would have sent me scrambling with my heart pounding. When Sarah Mobile meant emergency, crisis need. When being her father meant being available always, without question, without hesitation. But that was 3 years ago. A different life. A different man. 14 calls. 15. 16. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. The moon hung low over the water, painting everything silver. Rockport slept peacefully around me. This small coastal town that had become my sanctuary, my refuge, my new beginning. 20 calls. 21. 22. The vibrations came faster now, barely stopping before starting again. I imagine her in Portland, in that house, my house, pacing back and forth, redialing over and over, desperate and panicking. Text messages started appearing on the screen. Dad, please answer the phone. It's an emergency. Dad, I'm begging you, please. I stood at the window and counted. The discipline of numbers had always calmed me. In my old life, I had built an entire career on numbers. Revenue projections, growth percentages, return on investment, metrics and margins and careful calculations. Now I counted phone calls from my only child. 28, 29, 30. More texts flooded in. They're going to take everything, please, Dad. I know you're awake. I thought about the last real conversation we'd had. The one where I'd looked into my daughter's eyes and seen something I'd never seen before. The complete absence of my daughter looking back at me. 34, 35, 36. My phone's battery was dropping rapidly. Soon the sun would rise over the Atlantic, painting the sky in those shades that still took my breath away every single morning, even after 2 years of watching. Another text appeared. I'll lose the house. The house. Always the house. The 3-story craftsman in Portland that my father had bought in 1965, where I'd grown up, gotten married, raised Sarah alone after Margaret died. Every wall held memories that no amount of paint could ever cover. The house that Sarah and her husband Derek had convinced me to sign over for estate planning purposes. To protect your assets, Dad. To make everything easier. 39, 40, 41. I could feel the weight of what was coming. I'd known for months, ever since Laura Bennett's carefully worded phone call back in September, since the investigation had quietly begun, since all the pieces started falling into place. I'd known this moment would arrive eventually. The vibration stopped. 10 seconds passed. Maybe 15. Silence hung heavy in the dark room. I counted the seconds the same way I'd counted the calls. Then it started again. Call number 42. This time I picked up the phone, not to answer it, just to look at it, to feel its weight in my hand, to see my daughter's name glowing in the darkness one more time. The vibration stopped. I waited, barely breathing, but there was no 43rd call. Just a final text message. Dad, I'm sorry for everything. Please help us. I don't know what else to do. 42 calls. The same number of years Sarah had lived when she and Derek had orchestrated my removal from my own life. When she'd sat across from me at that attorney's office and told me, with Derek's hand resting on her shoulder, that it would be better for everyone if I went to Maplewood Assisted Living. You're getting older, Dad. Let us take care of things now. It's time. I set the phone face down on the nightstand and returned to the window. The sky was lightening at the edges now. That deep blue of pre-dawn slowly giving way to something softer, something gentler. Somewhere below in the house, I heard the coffee maker gurgling to life automatically. Its familiar sound a small comfort. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. I knew what Sarah wanted. I'd known for months that this day would come. Known from the moment Laura told me about the investigation, about Derek's schemes, about the house mortgage to the breaking point, about the debt collectors and foreclosure notices piling up like autumn leaves. I'd known, and I'd waited. But before you can understand why I stood there in the darkness, counting my daughter's desperate calls without answering a single one, before you can understand those 42 rings that mark the end of one story and the beginning of another, you need to understand how we got here. You need to understand what happened 3 years ago when I stopped being Robert Mitchell, successful business consultant and devoted father, and became something else entirely. Something I never thought I'd have to become. You need to understand the day I signed away my life. 3 years ago, I had everything. That's what I thought, anyway. Standing in the conference room of Mitchell Consulting on a bright September morning in 2021. Sunlight streamed through the windows of our downtown office, illuminating the mahogany table where I'd closed hundreds of deals over 36 years. Sarah sat across from me, radiant in a navy blazer that reminded me so much of her mother it hurt to look at her. Beside her, Derek adjusted his tie with that practiced smoothness of his. Young, ambitious, Yale MBA. Everything a father could want for his daughter. Everything I'd been blind enough to believe. "Dad, this is incredible," Sarah said, her eyes bright as she looked at the transition document spread before us. "You built something truly amazing here." I felt pride swell in my chest until it almost hurt. 38 clients. Annual revenue of $2.1 million. A reputation built over decades of hard work and integrity. At 60 years old, I was ready to step back, ready to let the next generation take the reins. "Your mother would be so proud," I said, watching Sarah's eyes glisten with emotion. Margaret had been gone 11 years, but her absence lived in every corner of our lives, in every decision, in every moment. "She always said you'd surpass me someday." Derek leaned forward with that confident smile of his. "We've been reviewing the structure carefully, Robert. There's real growth potential here. We could expand into tech consulting, maybe even open a satellite office in Seattle." I listened to their vision, feeling that peculiar mix of pride and melancholy that comes with letting go of something you built with your own hands. This company had been my life's work, my purpose, my legacy. But Sarah was my world, my entire world. We signed the papers that afternoon. I became senior advisor, a title that sounded distinguished but meant very little in practical terms. They would handle daily operations. I would golf more, travel finally, read those books gathering dust on my shelves. The first month was wonderful, almost perfect. They consulted me on major decisions, asked my opinion, made me feel valued and respected. Derek even took me to basketball games, bought expensive seats, treated me like family. Then things began to shift, slowly at first. So slowly I almost didn't notice. "Dad, we're worried about you," Sarah said one evening in late October. We were having dinner at the house, my house, though she'd started saying our house instead. "Worried about what?" I asked, genuinely confused. She exchanged a glance with Derek. That look, I'd remember it later as the first visible crack in everything. "Your memory," she said softly. "You've been forgetting things lately." I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone. "What things?" "Last Tuesday. We had dinner planned. You never showed up." I searched my memory carefully, found nothing there. No dinner plans. No conversation about Tuesday. But Sarah's face was so earnest, so genuinely concerned, that doubt crept into my mind like cold water. "I don't remember planning that," I said slowly. "That's exactly what worries us," Derek said gently, reaching across the table. "That's exactly the problem, Robert." Over the next weeks, incidents multiplied like weeds. A doctor's appointment I'd supposedly missed. Keys found in strange places, the refrigerator, the mailbox, though I had absolutely no memory of putting them there. Conversations I'd allegedly had, but couldn't recall. "Maybe you should see someone," Sarah suggested, her voice full of concern. "Just to be safe, Dad." So I went. Dr. Emily Thompson ran extensive tests, asked detailed questions, nodded sympathetically throughout. When the results came back, they were completely normal. "Your cognitive function is excellent for your age, Mr. Mitchell," she told me with a reassuring smile. I see no signs of dementia or memory impairment whatsoever. Relief flooded through me like warm water. I wasn't losing my mind after all, but Sarah seemed almost disappointed when I told her the results. Maybe you should get a second opinion, Dad, just to be absolutely certain. The legal papers appeared in December 2021. Derek brought them on a Saturday morning, his expression grave and serious. Sarah was running errands, conveniently absent. The papers filled a thick manila folder. Conservatorship documents, power of attorney, asset protection trusts, pages and pages of legal language. This seems excessive, I said, flipping through them. I'm 60 years old, not 90. Better to be prepared, Robert, especially with your memory issues. The doctor said I'm fine, Derek. He pointed to the bottom of each page with a pen. You signed these documents last month, Robert. Don't you remember? I stared at the papers in disbelief. There at the bottom was my signature, slightly shaky, but unmistakably mine, dated November 18th, 2021. But I had no memory of signing anything. No memory at all. I didn't. Derek's hand landed on my shoulder, heavy and firm. This is exactly what we're talking about, Robert. You're forgetting significant things, important things. My mind spun in circles. The signatures looked real, completely authentic. But how could I have forgotten something so monumentally important? Let me call Laura, I said, reaching for my phone. Laura Bennett, my attorney of 18 years. Someone I trusted completely. Laura, retired dad. Moved to Arizona last fall. Don't you remember? I didn't remember that either. When I called her office, a recorded message confirmed she closed her practice permanently. Everything was slipping away like sand through my fingers, and I couldn't understand how or why. January brought the real blow, the one that shattered everything. I came home from a morning walk to find Sarah and Derek with two strangers in business attire waiting in my living room. Dad, we need to talk, Sarah said, her voice soft but her eyes hard as steel. We found irregularities in the house title, liens we didn't know about, tax issues that need immediate attention. What liens? I asked, my heart starting to pound. The house is paid off, has been for years. The man stepped forward, extending his hand. Mr. Mitchell, I'm James Parker from Secure Estate Management. There are documents that need your immediate attention. Time-sensitive matters. More papers. More signatures required. My head pounded like someone was hitting it with a hammer. We need to transfer the house into a trust, Derek explained, his voice calm and reasonable. To protect it from creditors. Just temporarily, until we sort everything out. What creditors? I don't have any debt. Sarah's eyes filled with tears that looked genuine. Dad, you've been making concerning financial decisions. Receipts for things you don't remember buying. Checks written to people we can't identify. I looked at the papers, vision blurring. Transfer of deed. Quitclaim. Legal terms I didn't fully understand. I need time to think about this. We don't have time. Derek's voice had an edge now, sharp and cutting. If we don't act immediately, you could lose everything. The house, your savings, everything. I signed. God help me, I signed. They were my family. They said they were protecting me. And all the evidence, those signatures, those missed appointments, it all pointed to one terrible, inescapable conclusion. I was losing my mind. The worst came in February. Dad, we found a wonderful place for you, Sarah said. We were sitting in the kitchen. In their kitchen now, not mine anymore. Maplewood Assisted Living. Beautiful facility right on the river. You'll love it there. I don't need assisted living, I said, my voice shaking. Derek's hand slammed down on the table, making me jump. You left the stove on yesterday, Robert. Burned a pot completely through the bottom. You could have burned down the entire house. I had no memory of that either. Just another blank space where a memory should have been. Just temporarily, Sarah said, reaching for my hand. Until we get your health stabilized. Until things improve. But I saw the truth in her eyes, clear as daylight. There would be no coming home. This was permanent. I moved to Maplewood on March 8th, 2022. Most of my life fit into 6 boxes and 2 suitcases. Not much to show for 60 years of living. As Derek drove me away from downtown, I turned to look back one last time. The house where Margaret and I had brought Sarah home from the hospital. Where I'd read her bedtime stories and taught her to ride a bike. Where we'd celebrated every birthday Every holiday, every milestone. The house that no longer belonged to me. That's when I realized it, too late to do anything about it. My daughter was stealing my life, one forged signature at a time, and I had helped her do it. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have seen the warning signs I missed? Drop a comment and let me know, because this story is just beginning and it gets so much harder from here. Maplewood-assisted living smelled like industrial cleaning solution mixed with overcooked vegetables and something else I couldn't quite name. Defeat, maybe? The death of independence. That peculiar scent of giving up. The smell hit me the moment I stepped through those automatic doors on March 8th, 2022, and it never went away. My room was on the second floor, number 214. I shared it with Howard Patterson, an 81-year-old former accountant who'd had a massive stroke. He couldn't speak anymore, just made these wet, gurgling sounds that kept me awake night after night. 2 narrow beds, 2 small dressers, 1 window overlooking the parking lot where I could watch other people's families come and go. This was my life now. This small, sterile space that smelled like antiseptic and sadness. I unpacked my 6 boxes slowly, trying to make the cramped space feel like something other than a prison cell. Photos of Margaret and Sarah went on the dresser, though looking at them hurt more than it helped. My business award stayed in the box, hidden away. Looking at them was unbearable, a reminder of everything I'd lost. The books I'd planned to finally read sat stacked by my bed, though I couldn't focus enough to get past the first page of anything. Depression settled over me like a heavy, suffocating blanket. Sarah didn't visit, not once in those first 7 weeks. She called twice, brief, uncomfortable conversations where she asked how I was adjusting, her voice bright and false. Derek came once in mid-April, wearing an expensive suit I'd never seen before. "Just need you to sign a few more things, Robert," he said, spreading papers across the common room table while other residents watched with empty eyes. "We need to liquidate some assets to cover house repairs. Nothing major. I signed because what choice did I have? What power did I have left?" I found out later he'd stolen $173,000 from my retirement fund that day. While I sat there like a fool, trusting him, the days blurred together into a gray, endless monotony. Breakfast at 7. Morning activities, bingo, chair yoga, craft projects designed for people with dementia. Lunch at noon. Afternoon nap, whether you wanted one or not. Dinner at 5. Lights out 9. I was 60 years old, living like I was 90 and dying inside a little more each day. Howard died on a Tuesday in late April. I woke that morning knowing something was wrong. His breathing had stopped, and the room was too quiet, too still. Nurses rushed in after I pressed the call button. By breakfast, he was gone, like he'd never existed at all. That afternoon, they brought in a new roommate. He lasted 4 days before his family moved him to a private room, unable to bear seeing their father in such a place. Then another man, then another. 5 roommates in 7 weeks. I was the constant, the one nobody came to visit, the one nobody wanted to see. I thought about calling Laura Bennett, but what would I say? That my daughter had stolen my life? That I'd signed it all away willingly, too confused and frightened to know what I was doing? I had no proof, just signatures that looked like mine and a daughter who'd stopped pretending to care. Bernard Jacobs walked into my life on May 20th, 2022. I was sitting in the common room, staring at a television I wasn't watching, when I heard a loud voice echo down the hallway like thunder. "Henry Patterson, 3rd floor." "Well, why the hell didn't you say so?" The voice belonged to a bear of a man, easily 6'4", with white hair and a face weathered by decades of sun and salt water. He wore jeans and a navy sweatshirt, and he moved through Maplewood like he owned the place, like the rules didn't apply to him. He caught me staring. "You know Henry Patterson?" "Howard Patterson was my roommate," I said quietly. "He passed away 3 weeks ago." Bernard's face fell, genuinely stricken. He pulled up a chair and sat heavily, the chair creaking under his weight. "Oh, hell. Henry was a good man. We served together in the Pacific back in '74. I was supposed to visit last month, but my boat needed repairs." His voice caught. "I'm sorry for your loss." "I'm sorry for yours," I said, meaning it. Bernard looked at me properly, then really looked at me. "You're too young to be in a place like this." "What are you, 60? 61. Jesus Christ. What happened to land you here? I don't know why I told him. Maybe because he was a stranger and strangers are sometimes easier to talk to than anyone else. Maybe because I was desperate to talk to someone who wasn't a nurse or another dying resident. Maybe because I've been carrying the weight of it alone for so long that it was crushing me. But I told him everything. About the company I'd built from nothing. About Derek and Sarah. About the signatures I didn't remember making and the house I'd lost and the life stolen from me piece by careful piece. Bernard listened without interrupting, his weathered face growing harder with each detail. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, processing it all. That's elder abuse, he said finally, his voice low and angry. Financial exploitation. That's what they call it when family does this. They're my family. My daughter. I don't give a damn if she's the Queen of England herself. Bernard leaned forward, intensity burning in his eyes. What you're describing is a crime, Robert. A serious crime. They took everything. All I have is what's in my room. Bernard stood abruptly, paced to the window, stared out at the parking lot where the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly. When he turned back, his face was set with absolute determination. I have a place in Maine. Rockport. Little town on the coast. Beautiful as anywhere you'll ever see. 3-bedroom house. Too big for one old sailor rattling around alone. You could stay there. Get yourself sorted out, away from all this. I stared at him, unable to process what he was offering. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you don't belong in this place. I know your family is robbing you blind while you're out in here. And I know that if you stay much longer, you're going to give up completely. I can see it in your eyes. He held out his hand, rough and callous from years of working boats. What do you say, Robert? I thought about Sarah, about the daughter who'd stopped visiting, who'd stolen my home and business and dignity, about Derek's forged signatures and Dr. Thompson's clean bill of health, about Howard Patterson dying alone in the bed next to mine. I took Bernard's hand and shook it firmly. When do we leave? Give me 3 days to make arrangements. Can you be ready? I laughed for the first time in months, the sound strange and rusty in my throat. I can pack everything I own in 20 minutes. 3 days later, on May 23rd, 2022, I walked out of Maplewood with Bernard Jacobs. No one tried to stop us. I wasn't a prisoner, after all, just a voluntary resident who'd chosen to leave, who'd chosen freedom over safety. Sarah called as we crossed into New Hampshire, panic clear in her voice. Dad, where are you? Maplewood called and said you checked out. What's going on? I'm going to Maine, I said simply. What? Dad, you can't just leave like this. We need to discuss this. You're not well. I hung up. Then I turned off the phone completely and didn't look back. The drive took 51 hours. We took turns at the wheel, stopped at diners and rest stops, slept in cheap motels that smelled like cigarettes and cleaning products. Bernard told me stories about his Navy days, about his late wife Dorothy, about the house in Rockport he'd bought 28 years ago with her. I told him about Margaret, about raising Sarah alone after cancer took my wife when Sarah was just 12, about building Mitchell Consulting from absolutely nothing, about the pride I'd felt watching my daughter grow into a capable, intelligent woman, about the exact moment I realized that woman was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize at all. We crossed into Maine on May 26th, just after noon. Bernard took the coastal route, and suddenly there it was, spread out before us like a promise. The Atlantic Ocean, stretching endless and impossibly blue under the afternoon sun. Welcome to Rockport, Bernard said as we passed the town sign, and something in my chest loosened for the first time in months. I rolled down the window and breathed in salt air, so clean and fresh it made my eyes burn with tears I didn't try to hide. I had $792 in my wallet. Everything else was gone. My house, my business, my retirement savings, my reputation, my dignity. My daughter had taken it all without a second thought. But sitting in that truck, watching the Atlantic waves crash against the rocky Maine coast, feeling the salt breeze on my face, I could breathe again. For the first time in 8 months, I could actually breathe. The ocean gave me something I thought I'd lost forever. But healing doesn't happen overnight, and the darkness was far from over. Stay with me, because what comes next changed everything. Depression doesn't disappear just because the ocean outside your window is beautiful. I learned that the hard way. Bernard's house sat on Harbor View Street, for blocks from the water. A small Cape Cod cottage painted weathered blue, with a front porch that overlooked Penobscot Bay. It was perfect in its own way. Cozy, quiet, with enough space for two men to live without getting in each other's way. But perfect surroundings couldn't fix what was broken inside me, couldn't heal wounds that ran bone deep. The first weeks were the absolute hardest. I'd wake at 3 in the morning, my heart racing, absolutely convinced I'd heard Sarah's voice or Derek's footsteps. I'd lie there in the darkness of my new room, listening to the waves and Bernard's snoring from down the hall, trying to remember that I was safe now, that I'd escaped. But escaped to what? I was 61 years old with $792 to my name. No home, no business, no family. Everything I'd spent 4 decades building was gone, erased like it had never existed. And I didn't even have the legal standing to fight for it back. I'd sign it all away, or at least someone had signed it away using my name, and I couldn't prove otherwise. The anger came in waves as relentless as the tide outside my window. Some days I'd pace Bernard's small house like a caged animal, fury burning through me, so hot and bright I couldn't see straight, couldn't think of anything except revenge. Other days, the depression was so heavy I couldn't get out of bed until well past noon, couldn't find a reason to move or breathe or exist. Bernard never pushed. He made coffee, leave a cup outside my door, and go about his day. Sometimes I'd hear him on the porch talking to neighbors or working on one of his endless repair projects, normal life continuing all around me. He gave me space to fall apart, but he never let me disappear completely. Breakfast is ready when you are, he'd call through my door. Or lunch, or dinner. I'm not particular about timing, Robert. I started taking walks along the harbor path, at first just to get out of the house, to escape those 4 walls that felt like they were closing in. Rockport in late May was beautiful beyond words. Tourists filling the streets, sailboats dotting the bay, the smell of salt water and pine trees mixing in the air in a way that should have been healing. But I barely saw any of it. I walked with my head down, hands shoved deep in my pockets, lost in the endless loop of what I'd lost and how I'd lost it and whether I'd ever find my way back. The lobster boats went out every morning before dawn. I'd watch them from the breakwater, these weathered vessels heading into the gray morning light, and feel a strange kinship with their routine. They knew what they were doing. They had purpose, direction, meaning. I was just a man walking in circles, going nowhere at all. It was on one of those morning walks, about 4 weeks after arriving in Rockport, that I first met Patricia Reynolds. Her bookstore, the Harbor Light, occupied a narrow storefront on Main Street. I'd walked past it maybe 15 times without going in, but that morning a sudden rain shower drove me through the door seeking shelter. The smell of old books and fresh coffee hit me immediately, familiar and comforting. The store was small but beautifully organized, with floor-to-ceiling shelves and a coffee bar tucked into the back corner. A woman in her mid-50s looked up from behind the counter, reading glasses perched on her head. "Welcome to Harbor Light. Coffee's fresh if you want some." "Just escaping the rain," I said, my social skills rusty from disuse. "Best reason to visit a bookstore." She smiled warmly. "I'm Patricia. You're new in town. I've seen you walking past every morning, always alone. Small town life. Everyone noticed everything, knew everyone's business whether you wanted them to or not." "Robert," I said, and found myself accepting the cup of coffee she offered, the warmth spreading through my cold hands. That became my routine without me quite meaning for it to happen. Every morning I'd walk to Harbor Light, drink coffee that Patricia never charged me for, browse books I couldn't afford to buy. Patricia never seemed to mind my presence. She'd chat about Rockport, about the tourists, about her customers. Light conversation that didn't require me to explain why a man my age was living off a stranger's charity, existing on borrowed time and borrowed space. Bernard noticed a change after a few weeks. "You seem a little less likely to punch a hole in my wall," he observed one evening over dinner. "Patricia's place doing you good?" "It's just coffee," I said, defensive. "Coffee is never just coffee in a small town," Bernard said with a knowing smile. "Especially when the person pouring it is as perceptive as Patricia Reynolds." He was right, of course. Patricia was slowly, carefully drawing my story out of me like poison from a wound. Not all at once. Just small pieces over weeks of morning conversations that felt safe somehow. Where I was from, how I'd ended up in Rockport, what I'd done before retirement. "So you were a business consultant," she said one morning in mid-July, genuine interest in her voice. 36 years, you said?" 38, I corrected automatically. "Built it from nothing. Must have been good at it." I shrugged, but the anger flared hot and sudden. I had been good at it. Good enough to build a $2 million operation from scratch. Good enough that my own daughter and her husband had stolen it from me, had forged my signature over and over while I trusted them completely. Patricia was quiet for a moment, studying me with those sharp eyes that seemed to see too much. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," I said, though I wasn't sure at all. "Would you mind looking at my books?" "Not the books I sell. The store's books. Financial records, inventory management, that sort of thing." She looked genuinely embarrassed, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen before. "I'm an English major who fell in love with literature. The business side, I'm drowning if I'm honest. I can barely keep the lights on most months. I hadn't looked at a balance sheet in 6 months. Hadn't thought about profit margins or cash flow or inventory turnover or any of the things that had once been as natural to me as breathing. I don't have any credentials anymore," I said slowly. "No access to my licenses, my certifications, nothing. I'm not asking for credentials, Robert. I'm asking if you take a look as a favor. I'll pay you in coffee and whatever books you want. Fair trade." Something stirred in my chest, unfamiliar and almost painful. Not quite hope, but maybe its distant cousin. Maybe the beginning of purpose. "Let me see what you've got," I heard myself say. Patricia's books were a complete mess, but an understandable mess. The kind of mess that comes from someone doing everything themselves with no training and no time. She was using outdated software, making decisions based on gut feeling rather than data, bleeding money in ways she didn't even realize. But the bones of a good business were absolutely there. She had loyal customers who came back month after month. Unique inventory you couldn't find anywhere else. A perfect location. Good instincts, just no structure to support them. I spent 3 days at a corner table in Harbor Light with spreadsheets spread around me like a paper fortress, my old business mind slowly waking up after its long, dark hibernation. The work felt good in a way I'd almost forgotten. Familiar, like finding a piece of myself I'd thought was lost forever. "Your inventory turnover is killing you," I told Patricia on the 3rd day, laying out the numbers. "You're keeping way too much stock of slow-moving titles. In your coffee bar, you're undercharging by at least 30%. The margins are far too thin to be sustainable." I showed her the numbers, explained the changes she needed to make, watched her face light up with understanding as the pieces clicked into place. "Robert, this is incredible. This is exactly what I needed. How much do I owe you?" "Nothing," I said firmly. "You gave me something to do besides walk in circles and feel sorry for myself. That's payment enough." But Patricia insisted on paying something, wouldn't take no for an answer. We settled on a consulting arrangement. I'd help her restructure the business properly, and she'd pay me a small monthly retainer. Enough for me to contribute to Bernard's household expenses. Enough to feel like less of a charity case, more like a person with value again. Word spread quickly in a town of 4,000 people. By late summer, I had 4 more clients. A local bakery struggling with pricing. A fishing equipment shop hemorrhaging money. A small tech startup run by a young couple who'd moved to Maine from Boston and had no idea what they were doing. The work was different from what I'd done at Mitchell Consulting. Smaller scale, more hands-on, more personal. But it was real, and it was mine, and nobody could take it away from me. Bernard watched my transformation with quiet satisfaction, like he'd known all along how this would turn out. "Told you," he said one evening as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the bay in shades of orange and pink that took my breath away. "Told you that you weren't done yet." I thought about Portland, about the life I'd lost, about Sarah and Derek living in my house, running my company into the ground while I rebuilt myself from absolute nothing in a town 3,000 miles away. The anger was still there, burning low and constant like coals that never quite went out. But it was changing, transforming into something else. Something colder and more patient. Something that could wait. No, I agreed, watching the sun sink below the horizon. I'm not done yet. I was building something new from the ashes of everything I'd lost. But thousands of miles away, Sarah and Derek were building something too, on foundations of lies and forged signatures. And I was about to find out just how deep their betrayal really went. Keep watching. By September 2022, word had spread throughout Rockport and beyond. There was a business consultant who actually knew what he was doing, who understood small-town economics, who didn't charge big city prices, who genuinely cared about helping local businesses not just survive but thrive. My cheap prepaid phone started ringing regularly with requests. A restaurant owner facing bankruptcy. A boat repair shop losing customers. A woman who wanted to open an art gallery, but didn't know how to write a business plan that made sense. I was building something again. Not the empire I'd lost, but something smaller, more personal, more meaningful. Something that was entirely my own, that nobody could forge signatures to steal. And for the first time since March, when I'd watched my life disappear into Derek's carefully crafted lies, I felt like Robert Mitchell again. Not the broken version, the real version. I'd spent 40 years fixing broken businesses. Rockport needed exactly that, and I had the skills to provide it. Emily Carter came to me in early October. She owned Sunrise Bakery, a small shop 3 blocks from the water that had been struggling since the pandemic hit. Her pastries were absolutely incredible. I'd been buying her blueberry scones every Sunday morning without fail. But her business model was slowly killing her. "I'm 4 months behind on rent," she told me, sitting across from me at Harbor Light with spreadsheets that made my consultant's heart ache. "My landlord's being patient, but I can't keep asking for extensions. I'm drowning, Robert." I spent a week analyzing her operation from top to bottom. The problems were painfully clear to anyone who knew what to look for. She was drastically underpricing her products, overstaffing during slow periods, and her wholesale accounts were losing money on every single transaction. "You're too generous, Emily," I told her bluntly. "You're running a charity, not a bakery. That's going to destroy you." We restructured everything systematically. Raised prices by 18%, still less than her competitors. Cut her staff hours strategically to match actual customer flow. Dropped the wholesale accounts that were bleeding her dry and focused on what she did best. Within 7 weeks, she was profitable for the first time in 20 months. "I don't know how to thank you," Emily said, handing me a check for $450. My first real payment as an independent consultant, earned honestly with work that mattered. I held that check in my hand and felt something crack open inside me. Some wall I'd built around my heart starting to crumble. Not the pride I'd felt at Mitchell Consulting, where 6-figure deals were routine and clients were just numbers on a spreadsheet. This was different, deeper, more real. This was the knowledge that I'd helped someone who genuinely needed it, using skills I'd thought were lost forever, stolen along with everything else. I sat in Bernard's truck in the bakery parking lot and cried like a child, all the grief and anger and hope pouring out of me in great, shaking sobs. Thomas Morrison's restaurant came next. The Lighthouse had been a Rockport institution for 28 years, known by everyone who'd ever visited. But Thomas was 66 and drowning in debt from a kitchen renovation that had spiraled wildly over budget. His daughter wanted him to sell, retire, move to Florida, and give up. "This restaurant is my entire life," Thomas said, his weathered hands wrapped around a coffee cup at my usual corner table, his voice breaking. "I can't just walk away." I looked at his numbers and saw a path forward. Not easy by any means, but possible if he was willing to make hard changes. We renegotiated his supplier contracts, restructured his menu to focus on higher-margin items, implemented a reservation system to reduce food waste. I even helped him set up a small catering operation specifically for the summer tourist season. For months later, Thomas was back in the black, stable and growing. His daughter stopped pushing him to sell. "You gave me my restaurant back," he said, gripping my hand with tears in his eyes. "More than that, you gave me hope when I had none left." Word continued to spread like wildfire. The Rockport Town Council invited me to speak at their October meeting about small business development and economic growth. I stood in front of 30 people in the municipal building and talked about what I'd learned, really learned, not from textbooks, but from lived experience. That strong local businesses create strong communities. That sometimes all someone needs is a little expertise and a lot of patience. That success isn't always measured in millions. Rebecca Stone, the town councilor, shook my hand afterward with genuine warmth. "We're lucky to have you here, Robert. Rockport needed someone exactly like you. Someone like me. Not someone who'd lost everything. Not someone whose own daughter had betrayed him in the worst possible way. Just someone who could help, who had value, who mattered." I was becoming part of something bigger than myself. Part of this community that had welcomed a broken stranger and given him room to rebuild, to heal, to become whole again. The work gave me purpose, absolutely. But it was the rhythm of life in Rockport that gave me peace I didn't know I was searching for. My days developed a pattern that felt almost meditative in its simplicity, its predictability, its goodness. Morning walks along the harbor, watching the lobster boats head out into the pre-dawn darkness. Coffee at Harbor Light, where Patricia and I had become genuine friends who understood each other without needing to explain everything. Afternoons consulting with clients, solving problems, watching small businesses stabilize and grow under my guidance. Evenings on Bernard's porch, drinking beer and watching the sunset paint the bay in colors that never got old, that still took my breath away every single time. Dinners were often communal affairs, warm and loud and full of life. Bernard would invite Patricia or Emily or Thomas. We'd cook together, share stories, laugh in a way I genuinely hadn't laughed in years. Real laughter, not the polite kind you fake at business dinners. These people didn't know about Mitchell Consulting or my house in Portland or what Sarah and Derek had stolen from me. They knew me as Robert, the business consultant who'd helped save their bookstore or their bakery or their restaurant. They knew the version of me I was becoming, not the version I'd lost. My body changed too, reflecting the internal healing. The walks, the physical work of helping clients move inventory or reorganize spaces, the simple act of being present in my life instead of drowning in depression and anger. It all showed in ways I hadn't expected. My face lost its gray pallor, replaced by the kind of tan you get from actual sun, not artificial light. I lost 17 pounds of stress weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. My hands, which had trembled constantly those first weeks in Rockport, were steady again, strong again. I caught my reflection in Harbor Light's window one November morning and barely recognized myself. Not younger, I'd never looked 60 again, but healthier, more alive, more real. "You look good, Robert," Bernard observed that evening, his voice matter of fact. Like somebody who remembers how to be happy, how to be human. Was I happy? The question caught me completely off guard. I've been so focused on surviving, on rebuilding, on just making it through each day that I hadn't stopped to ask myself that fundamental question. But yes, despite everything I'd lost, despite the anger that still burned low and constant when I thought about Sarah and Derek, despite the fact that I owned nothing but 7 boxes of belongings and a prepaid phone, yes, I was happy in a way I'd never been before. Not the happiness I'd known before, when success meant quarterly growth and impressive client retention rates. This was quieter, deeper, more sustainable. The satisfaction of work that genuinely mattered. The comfort of real friendship. The peace of falling asleep to ocean waves instead of worrying about what signature Derek was forging that day. Christmas came to Rockport like a blessing. Bernard and I decorated the house, strung lights along the porch railing that reflected in the water. Patricia invited us to her annual holiday party where half of Rockport showed up with food and drinks and genuine warmth. Emily brought an entire table of pastries. Thomas brought lobster rolls that people talked about for weeks. Rebecca Stone gave me a bottle of local whiskey and told me something that made my throat tight. "The town is officially considering you a resident now. Robert, you've been here 7 months. That's past the trial period. You pass with flying colors." I'd been in Rockport for 7 months. More than half a year since Bernard had rescued me from Maplewood. since I'd escaped the life Sarah and Derek had trapped me in like a cage. I thought about Portland occasionally, wondered what they were doing with my company, my house. Whether Sarah ever thought about me beyond the monthly perfunctory text messages I never answered, never acknowledged. Whether Derek was still forging my signature, still stealing whatever little remained. But those thoughts came less frequently now, had less power to hurt me. Portland was 3,000 miles away and felt like another lifetime, another person's story. I was building something new and real, something that couldn't be taken away because it existed in relationships and reputation and the quiet satisfaction of work done well, done honestly. I was Robert Mitchell again. Not the man who'd built Mitchell Consulting from nothing, but someone better, someone who understood that success wasn't measured in revenue or office space, but in the ability to sleep peacefully at night, to look at yourself in the mirror without shame. I was happy, genuinely, unexpectedly, impossibly happy despite everything. And then on a cold October morning in 2023, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. A Florida area code that made my heart skip. I almost didn't answer, my finger hovering over the decline button. But something made me pick up, some instinct I couldn't name. Robert Mitchell? Yes. This is Laura Bennett. We need to talk about your daughter, about what she's done, and about the inheritance your father left you. That changes absolutely everything. Everything I thought I knew was about to shatter into pieces. The betrayal ran deeper than I'd imagined, but so did the truth. And the truth was about to set me free in ways I never could have predicted. Stay with me. Laura Bennett, your family attorney. I've been trying to reach you for months, Robert. I stood frozen in Bernard's kitchen on that cold Saturday morning in October 2023, phone pressed against my ear, trying to process what I was hearing. Laura Bennett, the attorney Derek had told me retired to Arizona. The attorney who'd supposedly closed her practice and disappeared. You're supposed to be retired, I managed to say. I am retired, mostly. Laura's familiar voice came through clear and strong. But I kept a few files I couldn't let go of, couldn't just walk away from. Robert, we need to talk about your father's estate. There's a trust you need to know about. Something important. My father had died in 2016, 7 years ago. I'd handled his estate myself, sold his small condo, distributed his modest savings according to his wishes. There was no trust, nothing hidden. I don't understand what you're talking about. I can't discuss this over the phone, not something this significant. Can you meet me in Portland next Tuesday at 2? It's urgent, Robert. Something in her voice, some quality of absolute seriousness, made me say yes without fully understanding why. Bernard drove me to Portland on Tuesday, neither of us speaking much during the 2-hour drive. My mind spun with possibilities, none of them making sense. Laura met me in the lobby of a small office building, older than I remembered, her hair completely gray now, but her eyes sharp and knowing as ever. Robert, you look remarkably well, she said, genuine surprise in her voice. Better than the last time I saw you, infinitely better. The last time you saw me was at my father's funeral 7 years ago. No, she said quietly. The last time I saw you was March 2022 at a coffee shop downtown. You were with your daughter and her husband. You looked diminished, Robert. Broken. That's when I started making calls, started digging into what was really happening. She shook her head, sadness crossing her features. Come upstairs. You need to see this. Her office was small but meticulously organized, covered with legal files stacked in precise order. Your father came to see me in December 2015, Laura began, pulling out a thick folder. 6 weeks before he died. He wanted to create a trust that you'd inherit, but that wouldn't go through probate. Something completely private, something protected. She spread documents across the desk. Deeds, stock certificates, bank statements with numbers that made my vision blur. Your grandfather, William Mitchell Sr., owned mineral rights to land in West Texas. Bought them in 1949 for almost nothing, just a gamble. Oil was discovered there in 1965. I knew this story, vaguely. My grandfather had told me about it once. The lucky break that had helped send my father to college, changed the family's trajectory. The royalty payments went into a trust, Laura continued, her voice steady and professional. Your grandfather was smart, Robert. When he died in 1981, the trust passed to your father. The payments were modest at first, maybe $18,000 a year. Your father never touched them, not once. Just let them accumulate, reinvested the income year after year. She pushed a statement toward me with careful deliberation. That's the current value of the Mineral Rights Trust. The oil company's been paying royalties for 42 years. With compound interest and careful management, it's grown significantly. The number on the page made my hand shake. $24 million. That's just the mineral rights, Laura said gently, watching my reaction. Your father also had a stock portfolio. Blue-chip companies, decades of steady growth, conservative investments. Another document slid across. Value, $875,000. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process the numbers swimming before my eyes. There's also a life insurance policy held in trust. $190,000. Laura's voice was infinitely gentle now, like she was speaking to someone in shock. Total estate value, $25.7 million. The room tilted dangerously. I gripped the edge of the desk, knuckles white. Why didn't I know? The words came out broken, barely a whisper. When Dad died, I went through everything, every single document. Because he didn't want you to know, Robert. Not then. Laura pulled out an envelope, yellowed with age, my name written in my father's distinctive handwriting. He left you a letter. I was instructed to give it to you only when the time was right, when you truly needed it. My hand shook so badly I could barely open it. My father's handwriting, familiar and achingly missed. Robert, if you're reading this, Laura has decided you need this money now. I trust her judgment completely. I never told you about the mineral rights because I wanted you to build your own success, your own legacy. You did that beautifully. Mitchell Consulting was all yours, built from nothing, and I was so incredibly proud. But I also knew that money changes things, changes relationships in ways that can't be undone. I watched what happened when my brother inherited Grandpa's business. The fights, the jealousy, the family torn completely apart. I didn't want that for you and Sarah. I wanted her to love you for who you are, not what you have. This money is yours alone, Robert. Not community property, not marital assets. Yours. Protected by trust structures that can't be touched. Use it to be free. You were always the only one who truly cared about me, not what I could give you. I saw that in you from the time you were small. Love, Dad. I read it twice, then a third time, tears blurring the words. My father had known even back in 2015, had seen something in Sarah that I'd been too blind to see. Does Sarah know about this? I asked, my voice raw. No, Laura said firmly. She thinks everything was distributed after your father died. This is entirely separate from any claims she might have. It's protected by trust structures so complex that even the conservatorship they tried to impose couldn't touch it because they didn't know it existed. I stared at the documents spread before me. A fortune I'd never known existed. $25.7 million. Enough to fight back, to hire armies of lawyers, to reclaim everything Sarah and Derek had stolen. Or enough to be truly, completely free. What do you want to do with this, Robert? Laura asked quietly. I thought about Portland, about the house on Laurel Street, about Mitchell Consulting, about Sarah and Derek probably still forging signatures, still stealing whatever remained of my old life. Then I thought about Rockport, about Bernard's house on Harborview Street, about Harbor Light and Emily's Bakery and Thomas's Restaurant, about the life I'd built from $792 and sheer determination. I want to buy Bernard's house, I said slowly. He won't sell it to me, but I want to buy it anyway, make it truly mine. Laura smiled, understanding in her eyes. That's it? That's all. I want to set up a charitable foundation. Elder Abuse Prevention and Small Business Development. The Callahan Foundation, named after my mother's maiden name. And your daughter? Laura's voice was careful, neutral. She'll never know about this money, about any of it. My voice was steady now, absolutely certain. Let her think I'm still the broken old man she threw away. I don't want any of it back, Laura. Not the house, not the company, nothing. We spent 4 hours structuring everything with meticulous precision. I bought Bernard's house. He protested loudly. then cried, then finally accepted when I made it clear I needed this. I set up the Callahan Foundation with $700,000 initial funding. The rest I invested conservatively, creating steady monthly income that would last the rest of my life and beyond. I kept it all quiet, paid cash through a newly formed LLC, kept driving Bernard's old truck, kept having coffee at Harbor Light every morning. Nothing in my daily life changed except the knowledge that I was finally completely, absolutely free. Financial independence didn't just mean having money. It meant having choices, having power, having the ability to say no without fear. It meant nobody could ever control me through forged signatures again. I drove back to Rockport that evening, feeling lighter than I had in years, maybe in my entire life. The anger I'd carried since March 2022 was still there, but transformed into something patient and cold and utterly certain. I'd escaped Portland with nothing but determination. Now I had everything that truly mattered. Months passed like water. The Callahan Foundation started making grants, changing lives. I helped 15 more businesses stabilize and grow. Bernard and I celebrated Christmas in our house with Patricia and Emily and half of Rockport filling the rooms with warmth and laughter. I was happy in a way that felt unshakable, built on foundations of truth instead of lies. And then on a February morning in 2025, my phone rang with a number I recognized immediately. Robert, it's Douglas Merrick. I don't know if you remember me. We did business together back in Portland years ago. I remember Douglas. He'd been a client, then a friend, someone I trusted completely. Robert, you need to know what your daughter is doing. What they're both doing with your name, your reputation. It's bad. Really, really bad. Douglas Merrick's voice was tight with controlled anger, fury barely contained beneath a professional surface. I pressed the phone harder against my ear, my other hand gripping Bernard's kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. Tell me everything, I said, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. I'm in Portland for a tech conference. Last night I had drinks with some old contacts, people we both know. Your daughter's name came up, and Robert, it's bad. Worse than you can imagine. He paused, and I could hear him choosing his words carefully. Mitchell Consulting is hemorrhaging money like a sinking ship. Derek's been making insane investments. Crypto schemes that collapsed, tech startups that went belly up within months. Word on the street is they're leveraged to the absolute hilt, drowning in debt. How bad? I asked, though part of me already knew. I did some digging through my contacts. They've mortgaged your house, Robert. Second mortgage last year. Between that and Derek's catastrophic losses, they're looking at over $1 million in debt, maybe more. I closed my eyes, pain sharp and sudden. My house, the house my father bought in 1965, where Margaret died, where I raised Sarah through her childhood. There's more, Douglas continued. They're throwing a grand opening event. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Big spectacle, catered affair, everything expensive and showy. They're calling it Sterling Mitchell Consulting Group now. Sterling Mitchell. Derek's name first, using my reputation like a shield. They're telling people you're a silent partner, Robert, that you endorse the transition, that you're proud of what they've built. They're using your house as the venue, your name, your credibility, everything you spent 4 decades building. And they're lying to everyone. The anger hit me like a physical force. Not hot, desperate rage like before. This was different, colder, more calculated, absolutely clear. Robert, you still there? Go to the party, Douglas. Silence. What? Go to the party. I need you there as my eyes and ears. Robert, what are you planning? I'll call you back. I hung up and immediately dialed Laura Bennett. She answered on the second ring, like she'd been waiting. Laura, I need you to investigate something immediately. Derek Sterling. Those documents I signed back in 2022, all of them. I'm already on it, Robert, she said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. After our meeting in October, I hired a forensic document examiner, the best in the country, someone who used to work for the FBI. My heart hammered, and the signatures on those documents, the power of attorney, the deed transfer, the Maplewood admission forms, every single one. They're forgeries, Robert. Sophisticated forgeries, but forgeries nonetheless. The kitchen tilted slightly. You're absolutely certain? I have a 49-page report from Dr. Elizabeth Williams, formerly with the FBI. She compared known samples of your signature with the documents in question. The pressure points are wrong. The letter formation's inconsistent. Someone practiced your signature extensively, probably for months, but they couldn't replicate the unconscious patterns we all have. Derek, I said, the name tasting like poison. Almost certainly, Laura confirmed. Dr. Williams believes he practiced for 8 to 10 months based on the progression she observed. The earliest forgeries are shakier, less confident. By November 2021, he nearly perfected it. I thought back to those months, Derek always nearby, when I was signing documents, watching, studying, learning my patterns like a predator learning its prey. Can you prove it was him specifically? With enough investigation, yes, absolutely. The bigger question is what you want to do with this information, Robert. I watched through the window as February snow began to fall over Rockport, soft and silent and pure. I want to file charges, but not yet. Not until February 14th. Their grand opening event. Their party, Laura said, understanding immediately. Douglas Merrick will be there. Laura, I need you to do something for me. Something important. Over the next hour, we built the plan with meticulous care, every detail perfect. Laura would complete the investigation, compile every piece of evidence. The forensic analysis, the bank records showing the $173,000 theft, the mortgage documents, everything. She'd coordinate with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, who'd apparently already been building a case. There's a federal investigation? I asked, surprised. Small compared to your case, but yes. Derek's been involved in questionable crypto transactions, wire fraud, possible money laundering. The FBI's been building a case, but they didn't have enough for charges. Your forgeries change everything, make it all prosecutable. This is identity theft, elder abuse, potentially RICO charges if Sarah was knowingly involved, Laura continued, her voice hard. And Robert, if we do this publicly at their event, it won't just be justice. It'll be complete humiliation in front of everyone they've been lying to. Is that what you want? She asked carefully. I thought about my father's letter, about the $25 million he'd hidden, about his hope that Sarah loved me for who I was, not what I had. He'd been wrong. She'd never truly loved me at all, not in any way that mattered. I don't want revenge for revenge's sake, I said slowly. I want justice. Real justice. I want every person in that room to know the truth about what they did. I want the business community they've been lying to, using my name and my reputation, to know exactly who they really are. Then we'll make it happen, Laura said with grim satisfaction. Tell me in the comments what you would do in this situation. Would you expose them publicly or handle it privately? And if you've dealt with something similar with family betrayal or elder abuse, share your story if you're comfortable. You're not alone in this. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life, because this journey isn't over yet. The plan came together like pieces of a puzzle finally fitting into place. Laura outlined the logistics with military precision. She'd have FBI agents ready, discreet, standing by outside the venue. Douglas would attend the party as a normal guest and, at exactly the right moment, mention my name casually. By the way, I spoke with Robert Mitchell recently. Did you know he's doing consulting work in Maine? Quite successful from what I hear. Remarkable for someone who's supposedly incapacitated. That would be the spark, the first crack in their carefully constructed facade. Sarah and Derek had been telling everyone I was mentally incompetent, barely functional. Learning I was not just alive, but thriving would create questions, doubts, suspicion. And then the FBI would walk in with arrest warrants, and everything would collapse. When do we move? I asked Laura. I need 2 more weeks to finalize everything. The forensic report needs formal certification for court. The FBI needs to complete their parallel investigation of Derek's other crimes. But we can have everything ready by February 14th. Valentine's Day, the day their world would fall completely apart. Once this goes public, once the arrests happen, it's going to be major news, Laura warned. Are you prepared for that kind of attention? I looked around Bernard's kitchen at the photos on the refrigerator. Me with Patricia at the Summer Harbor Festival. Me with Emily at her bakery's anniversary. Me with Bernard on his boat, both of us grinning like idiots. I'd build a real life here, a good life. This would disrupt it, bring unwanted attention and questions. But some things were more important than peace and quiet. I'm prepared, I said firmly. It's time people knew what elder abuse actually looks like. Sometimes it's your own daughter, smiling while she forges your signature and steals your life. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, watching the snow fall, processing everything. Bernard came home an hour later, stamping snow off his boots. "You okay, Robert?" he asked, reading my face with the ease of long friendship. "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." I told him everything, every detail. Bernard listened without interrupting, his weathered face growing harder with each word. "They forged your signature for months while pretending to care for you," he said when I finished, his voice tight with fury. "Yes." Bernard was quiet for a long moment, processing. "I'm coming with you to Portland, to be there when it all happens." "Bernard, you don't have to do that." "The hell I don't," he said fiercely. "You're my family now, Robert. Real family. And I want to see the look on their faces when everything they build on lies comes crashing down around them." I felt something tight in my chest loosen, warmth spreading through me. "Thank you, my friend. That's what family does," Bernard said simply. February 14th arrived cold and clear. Douglas texted me at 7:02 p.m. Pacific time. Party started. It's spectacular and pathetic at the same time. I sat in Bernard's living room in Rockport, 3,000 miles away, phone in hand. Bernard sat beside me on the couch, glancing up from his book every few minutes to check my face. "How's it going?" he asked quietly. I showed him the text. "Spectacular and pathetic," Bernard repeated, shaking his head. "That about sums it up perfectly." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Douglas. "You wouldn't recognize your house. They've completely renovated it, transformed it. Looks like a corporate headquarters now. My house, 1247 East Laurel Street. The three-story Craftsman my father had bought in 1965 for $32,000, where every major moment of my life had happened. Now was the headquarters of Sterling Mitchell Consulting Group, built on lies and theft." More texts came in rapid succession, each one twisting the knife a little deeper. Sending photos now. The images loaded slowly, painfully. The first showed the exterior, my house completely transformed. The siding freshly painted. New windows that changed the entire character. A professional sign mounted prominently. Sterling Mitchell Consulting Group. Founded 1986. They were using the year I'd started Mitchell Consulting, claiming continuity that didn't exist, legitimacy they hadn't earned. The next photo showed the interior and my breath caught. My living room, where Margaret and I had hosted Sarah's birthday parties every year, where we'd spent Sunday mornings reading newspapers together, was now a sterile reception area. Modern furniture, glass tables, abstract art on walls that used to hold family photos. Every trace of the family that had lived there, erased like we'd never existed. Douglas's text appeared. "About 150 people here. Seattle business elite. Some investors I recognize. A few journalists, including someone from the Times. Sarah's working the room like a professional, like she was born to this." I could picture it perfectly. Sarah in a designer dress, probably something obscenely expensive. Her smile bright and practiced, playing the role of successful businesswoman. Beloved daughter carrying on her father's legacy. All built on forged signatures and stolen money and lies told so often they'd started to feel like truth. My phone rang. Douglas calling now. "Robert, I'm in the bathroom. Only place I can talk privately. You need to hear this." "Go ahead." The guest list is extremely impressive. Tech investors, venture capitalists, representatives from 2 major Seattle law firms. Sarah and Derek are presenting themselves as the next generation. Traditional wisdom meets modern innovation. That's their actual tagline. Are people buying it? I asked, my voice steady despite the fury building. Honestly, yes. They're very good at this, Robert. Extremely convincing. Sarah gave this whole speech about honoring your legacy, about how you built something incredible and trusted them to carry it forward. She's got this elaborate story about you retiring to focus on your health, making it sound noble. The anger was cold and steady in my chest, sharp as ice. What about Derek? He's a numbers guy, talking about expansion plans, new markets, technology integration. Very polished, very professional. If I didn't know what they'd done, I'd probably be impressed too. What's the atmosphere like? Celebratory. Champagne flowing freely. Expensive stuff. There's a photographer documenting everything. They're treating this like a major milestone, a triumph. I close my eyes. In their minds, maybe it was exactly that. Derek seems nervous, though, Douglas added. I've been watching him carefully. Keeps checking his phone, stepping away from conversations. His smile doesn't quite reach his eyes, doesn't look genuine. The debt, I said. Probably. Word in the business community is they're severely overextended financially. Some people here are whispering about it, wondering why they're throwing such an expensive party when they're supposedly struggling. How's Sarah handling the pressure? She's better at hiding it than Derek is. But I can see the tension if I look closely. The way she grips her champagne glass too tight. White knuckles. The forced quality to her laugh. She's performing, putting on a show. Another buzz. A text from Laura. FBI agents in position. 2 plainclothes officers outside venue. Portland PD coordinating. Arrest warrants ready and certified. Just say when. Douglas's voice came back. Robert, tell me about the house. What else have they changed? Everything, he said, and I could hear the sadness in his voice. The whole first floor is corporate space now. Your study is gone completely. It's a strategy room now, all glass and chrome. I haven't been upstairs, but from what I can see, they've stripped away anything personal, anything that would remind anyone that a family lived here, that this was a home. Margaret's reading nook where she'd spent her last good days. The spot where Sarah took her very first steps, and I'd cried with joy. The kitchen where I made breakfast every Sunday morning for 20 years. All erased, replaced by sterile corporate aesthetics designed to impress clients who'd never know the truth. There's something else, Douglas said quietly. I overheard Derek on the phone earlier, before the party really got going. Someone was calling about money. Sounded threatening. Like a loan shark or debt collector. Derek was saying he needed more time, that the business was about to take off, that it had investors interested who were going to save everything. All lies, I said. All lies, Douglas confirmed. This whole thing is a house of cards built on sand. They're throwing this party to convince people they're successful, to drum up business and attract investors who will bail them out of the hole they've dug. It's absolutely desperate. At 8:47 p.m., I texted Douglas. Are you ready? His response came immediately. Been ready since I walked in. Just tell me when. I took a deep breath, thought about Margaret, about my father, about the life stolen from me, and the better life I'd built from its ashes. I texted back. Now. Do it now. At 8:49 p.m. Pacific time, Douglas Merrick walked into a conversation circle that included Sarah, Derek, 2 tech investors, and a journalist from the Seattle Times. And he dropped the bomb that would destroy everything they'd built. According to the detailed text Douglas sent me afterward, it started small, just a casual comment that seemed innocent enough. By the way, I spoke with Robert Mitchell last week. Did you know he's doing consulting work in Maine? Very successful from what I hear. Quite remarkable for someone who's supposedly in declining health. The silence that followed was, Douglas told me later, absolutely exquisite. Sarah's champagne glass stopped halfway, to her lips, frozen. Derek's smile disappeared like someone had switched off a light. The tech investors exchanged confused glances. Jennifer Hart, the journalist, her instincts activated immediately, pulled out her phone to start taking notes. I'm sorry, what? One of the investors said. Robert Mitchell is actively working? Oh, absolutely. Douglas continued, playing innocent perfectly. We had a lovely conversation just a few days ago. He's living in Rockport, Maine, consulting for small businesses. Sharp as ever. Honestly sharper than I've ever heard him. But, another investor said, looking between Douglas and Derek with growing suspicion, we were told Robert was incapacitated, that he'd had to step back due to serious health issues. Incapacitated, Douglas let surprise color his voice perfectly. Who told you that? The words hung in air like a grenade with the pin pulled, everyone waiting for the explosion. Douglas raised his voice slightly, ensuring others nearby could hear clearly. In fact, Robert was telling me about his inheritance. Didn't you know about the Texas oil rights? His grandfather's mineral rights. Quite substantial for what I understand, worth millions. The room began to shift, conversations dying as people turned to listen, sensing drama. Robert has oil rights, someone said loudly. Mineral rights in West Texas, Douglas confirmed. Been paying royalties for decades. Worth several $1,000,000, I believe. He was quite pleased to finally have access to them after all these years. I could picture the scene from 3,000 miles away, could see it all playing out exactly as we planned. Conversations stopping. People turning to listen, to watch. Sarah's face going pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. One of the investors took a step toward Derek, his voice sharp. Sterling, you told us Mitchell had nothing left. You said he was incompetent, that the business transfer was absolutely necessary. That's not, Derek stammered, his careful facade crumbling. You said he'd lost everything in bad investments, another voice added, rising. You said the family had to step in because he was making irrational decisions, endangering everything. Douglas watched it unfold, still playing innocent. Lost everything? That doesn't sound right at all. When we spoke, he was quite clear about his finances. Talked about buying his house in Maine outright, setting up a charitable foundation for elder abuse prevention. Patricia Van Horn, Seattle's most notorious socialite and gossip, materialized at the edge of the growing crowd like a shark sensing blood in the water. Did I hear someone say Robert Mitchell is alive and well in Maine? Her voice carried across the room. The party's ambient noise dropped dramatically. More people turning, listening, sensing something happening, something big. Very much alive, Douglas confirmed, and thriving by all accounts. We had coffee just last week. He looked better than I've seen him in years, honestly. Sarah finally found her voice, panic creeping in. Douglas, I think there's been some misunderstanding here. No misunderstanding, Douglas said calmly. I have his number if anyone wants to verify. Not exactly the behavior of someone who's been declared incompetent, is it? One of the investors pulled out his phone immediately. I'm calling him right now. Sterling, if you've been lying to us about this. Please don't, Derek said, actual panic in his voice now. Please, we can explain everything. But it was far too late for explanations. The truth was spreading like wildfire through the crowd, text messages and whispers multiplying exponentially. At exactly 9 p.m., Laura Walsh walked in. She moved through the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea. 2 King County Sheriff's deputies flanking her, their presence unmistakable. She stopped directly in front of Derek Sterling, who'd gone completely pale. Derek Sterling. Her voice carried to every corner of the now silent room. I have a warrant for your arrest. Complete, utter silence. Every eye in the room fixed on Derek. What? His voice was barely a whisper. Laura's voice rang out clear and authoritative. You're being charged with wire fraud, forgery, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and identity theft. You have the right to remain silent. I watched through Douglas's video feed as Laura read Derek's Miranda rights while 150 people stood frozen, phones out, recording everything. Wait, Derek said, his voice rising in desperate panic. Wait, you don't understand. She knew. Sarah knew about everything. She told me to do it. Sarah's face transformed from shock to pure rage in an instant. You lying son of a... You said your father was incompetent. Derek shouted, all pretense gone. You said he'd never know. You said we deserved the business, that it should have been yours anyway. I thought the signatures were real. Sarah screamed back. You told me he'd signed everything. You showed me documents with his signature. Laura stepped between them, her voice cutting through the chaos. Mrs. Sterling, did you know your husband was forging your father's signature? Sarah was sobbing now, mascara running down her face in black streams. No, I swear I didn't know. He told me Dad had signed everything. He showed me the documents. You believed your father signed documents, making you his conservator, while simultaneously claiming he was mentally incompetent. Laura's voice was sharp, prosecutorial. He said. Trevor told me that's how it worked. That dad had to sign them before he completely lost capacity. Derek lunged toward her, fury in his eyes. Don't you dare. You knew exactly what was happening. You wanted the business. You wanted the house. This was your plan. One of the deputies grabbed Derek's arm while the other moved forward with handcuffs. No, please, Derek said, his voice breaking completely. Please, I have information. I can help you. I can tell you everything. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the absolutely silent room. Douglas's video showed Trevor's face the moment he realized it was truly over, that no amount of talking would save him now. Sarah, Derek called out as the deputies started leading him toward the door. Tell them you knew. But Sarah just stood there, frozen, tears streaming down her face, the foreclosure notice still clutched in her shaking hands. Laura turned to the crowd, professional and composed. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. This is an ongoing federal investigation. If anyone has relevant information, please contact the FBI's Seattle field office. She handed out business cards to several people, including the investors and Jennifer Hart from the Times. The deputies led Derek toward the door, the crowd parting silently. Douglas's camera followed them, capturing Derek's face, red and tear-stained and utterly destroyed, as he was led out through my father's house. The door closed behind them with finality. For a moment, nobody moved. Then people started talking all at once, whispering, shouting, pulling out phones to call lawyers and partners and anyone who needed to know. One by one, the investors and business partners who'd come to celebrate walked past Sarah, their faces ranging from anger to disgust to pity. Consider our investment withdrawn, one said coldly. You'll be hearing from our attorneys. Same here, another added. We'll be seeking full reimbursement. Jennifer Hart approached with her notebook. Mrs. Sterling, would you like to make a statement for the record? Sarah just shook her head, unable to speak, still clutching that foreclosure notice like a lifeline. The caterers began packing up, the party clearly over. Guests filed out in groups, some throwing sympathetic glances at Sarah, most not looking at her at all. Douglas sent me a final video at 10:49 p.m. It showed Sarah sitting alone on the staircase of my father's house, surrounded by the wreckage of everything she'd built on lies. The caterers worked around her, packing up untouched food, collecting dirty glasses, whispering to each other. The party was over. The truth had won. Douglas called me one last time. Robert, it's over. Everything. Do you want me to? Should I talk to her? I thought about my daughter sitting in my father's house. Her marriage destroyed, her business collapsed, her reputation in ruins, facing criminal investigation and civil lawsuits and the consequences of every choice she'd made. No, I said quietly. Let her sit with what she's done. I hung up and looked at Bernard, who'd been watching everything with me. How do you feel? He asked. Tired, I said honestly. And free. Finally, completely free. The call started at 1:47 a.m. Derek first, 7 times in rapid succession, his voicemails deteriorating from calculated calm to desperate threats. I deleted them all without listening to more than a few seconds of each. Then Sarah started calling. By 3 a.m., she called 32 times. I listened to the first few voicemails, heard her voice breaking, heard the genuine terror and regret. Dad, please. I didn't know about the forgeries. I swear I didn't know. Please tell them the truth. Please. By call 42 at 4:47 a.m., her voice was barely audible, destroyed by hours of crying. I'm not asking you to save me. I just need you to tell them one thing. Tell them I didn't know about Derek's forgeries. That's all. Because if I'm going to prison, I need it to be for what I actually did, not for crimes I didn't know were happening. A pause, her breathing shaking. I'm sorry, Dad. I love you. I never stopped loving you. I just stopped showing it. The phone didn't ring again after that. I sat there as first light began creeping through my window, the Atlantic turning from black to gray to blue outside. At 7:30 a.m., I called Laura. Laura, I need you to tell the FBI something. I'm listening. Sarah didn't know about the forged signatures. I'm certain of it now. Silence. How can you be sure? Because I listened to 42 voicemails last night, and I heard the truth in her voice. She's guilty of many things, but not forgery. And I won't let her go to prison for Derek's crimes. And what about Derek? Derek forged my signature, stole from my retirement fund, mortgaged my house without my knowledge or consent. He goes to prison. That's non-negotiable. And Sarah's other choices? Sarah made choices. She chose to put me in that home. She chose to take my business. She chose not to visit for months. Those choices cost her everything. Her marriage, her house, her reputation, her relationship with me. That's her punishment. But I won't let her go to prison for Derek's forgeries. Laura was quiet for a long moment. You're a better man than most, Robert. No, I said. I'm just a father who knows the difference between justice and revenge. And I'm choosing justice. 6 months passed. Derek's trial was swift and merciless. 8 years in federal prison. Sarah wasn't charged. The FBI investigation confirmed she hadn't known about the forgeries. But the consequences came anyway, exactly as I'd known they would. The divorce finalized in 3 weeks. The house went into foreclosure. Sterling Mitchell Consulting Group filed for bankruptcy. Laura told me Sarah took a job at a coffee shop. Minimum wage. She'd moved into a studio apartment, rode the bus to work. She's seeing a therapist twice a week, Laura reported. Making progress, but it's slow. I didn't ask Laura to stop checking on her. Maybe I felt sorry for Sarah. Maybe I just needed to know she was still alive, still trying. Life in Rockport continued, beautiful and peaceful. My consulting practice grew. The Callahan Foundation awarded its first grants. And then, on a Tuesday evening in late July, the text came. Dad, I don't expect you to respond. I just need to say this. I have a job at a coffee shop. I'm in therapy. I'm learning to take responsibility for my choices. You were right. I chose easy lies over hard questions. I chose comfort over truth. I chose to abandon you when you needed me most. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet. I just want you to know I'm trying to become someone worthy of being your daughter again. I love you. I'm sorry. Sarah. I read it 5 times, then finally responded 3 days later. Sarah, the fact that you're not asking for anything tells me you're finally beginning to understand. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a process. When you're ready, come visit me in Rockport. We'll talk. Really talk. I love you. I never stopped. Dad. Her response came immediately. Thank you. I'll come when I'm ready. I promise. 1 year after the party, Sarah knocked on my door. She looked different. Thinner, older, worn down by consequences. But also more real, more genuine than I'd seen her in years. We sat on the porch, drinking coffee, talking honestly for the first time in years. No lies, no excuses, just truth. She apologized. Really apologized, taking responsibility without blaming Derek for everything. And I gave her a check for $48,000. For school, for a business degree, for a second chance to do things right. I don't deserve this, she said, crying. No, you don't, I agreed. But I'm giving it to you anyway. Because you're my daughter, and I want you to have a chance to build something real. Don't waste this second chance. You won't get a third. She drove away in her old Honda, the check in her purse, determination on her face. I don't know if she'll make it, if she'll truly change. But I gave her the tools. What she builds with them is up to her. I lost everything once. My house, my business, my dignity, my daughter. But in losing everything, I found what actually mattered. Peace, purpose, real friendship, the ability to sleep at night. The knowledge that my worth isn't measured in revenue or property, but in the lives I touch and the integrity I maintain. Sarah took one life from me. I built another, better one from the ashes. And that, in the end, is the greatest victory of all.